You join us up here in northern Finland, where it is very, very cold, and as you can see, very icy and very frozen. The reason we're up here is with Nissan to drive its e-Force all-wheel drive systems. Behind me, you've got the Nissan X-Trail, and you've also got the electric Nissan Ariya, which you can find reviews of on our website on completecar.ie. We're here to drive them in really properly challenging conditions, more so than what we normally get in Ireland or in Europe. So we're up here to really put this all-wheel drive system through its paces to see exactly how good it is. Now, why are we doing this? Well, a lot of people like to have all-wheel drive. They want to have that kind of a setup, but often they don't really realize exactly how well it can work. And although we're driving on snow and on ice, how this system works also has a lot of real-world applications. It's not just about having extreme weather like this. These systems also work very, very well in wet weather, going through standing water, mud, sand, anything like that where you're going to have low grip or limited grip. Because this is an electrified system, the electric motors rather than mechanical link-up means they can react much faster to any changes in traction. So if it does need to shift between the front axle and the rear axle, it can do it faster. So we're going to try it out, see what it's like, and it's an opportunity to drive these cars in conditions that we don't always get back at home. Should be kind of interesting. Now, these are slightly tricky conditions, but we do obviously have studded tires as well, so really grip isn't that much of an issue at all. It's really bites in, even in this frozen surface. Those tires make a huge difference, and really that's true of any vehicle you drive, whether you're driving on road or off road. The type of tire you have makes a massive difference, but also that goes hand in hand with this all-wheel drive transmission and how well it works. And I guess the real beauty of a system like this is that you don't really notice it working. That's how you know it works so well. It just does everything as a normal driver. You get in, you don't have to select anything. You do have some different driving modes, but this will just cope with everything as is. And even on this sort of, very sort of compacted, icy road surfaces, which granted we don't always get at home, you have that extra bit of confidence that it's not going to get bogged down, it's not going to slip and slide. In most instances, this is going to get you home or get you to work or wherever you need to go. But it does also work quite well. The e-pedal function, for example, I really like this system. So what the e-pedal does is it simulates that one pedal driving that you get with a full EV, even in a hybrid like this, and it does work very well. So as I'm driving along, when I lift off the accelerator pedal, the electric motors that are driving the wheels starts to slow the vehicle down quite quickly. Actually, it's almost like you're gently pressing the brake pedal. That's how much it slows it down. For example, we're going down a bit of a steep incline here, and again you can just lift off and it just retards that speed back. One other really interesting thing that this e-Force system does is it mitigates pitch as well. So when you lift off, it doesn't kind of go on its nose when it's slowing down. It stays much flatter, and therefore it's much more stable, but it's also much more enjoyable for everyone who's in the car. You're not going to feel like it's moving around all that much. So that's another way that this system does work quite well, and it is actually quite effective in how it does it. So as you lift off, you don't get that kind of sensation that it's going on the nose. The car stays much flatter. And that's one of those things that maybe you might not necessarily pick up the day you're going on a test drive, but as you live with a car like this, it's one of those things that you begin to appreciate quite a lot. The other thing the X-Trail does have plentiful supply of is power when you need it. Now, I certainly don't need to exploit all of it today, but it does have quite instantaneous power that you have from an electrified vehicle. This does feel more like an electric car than a hybrid, although it is still, you know, it isn't a fully electric car, but it does have that sort of sensation or similar sensation because of how it's only driven by the electric motors. The petrol engine only generates electricity for the battery that then drives the motors. So you have that really nice smooth power delivery that you get with an electric car. I guess the benefit of this is that you then also have the convenience with a combustion engine as your source of power, so you do have to just fill up as normal at the petrol station. For a lot of people, that can be a big difference. You know, that's really what, if you're doing longer journeys or longer trips, that can make a little bit of a difference. Yes, fuel economy can vary again depending on how you're driving, but I guess with this you can do longer motorway journeys and it's not going to be an issue. And at the same time, if you're driving around the city or at slower speeds in urban environments, you're doing so using mostly the battery power rather than the combustion engine. The principle of the E-Force system is also the same in the fully electric Ariya, and that's what we're going to drive next. First thing you notice about driving the Ariya versus the X-Trail is the ride quality on these really hard compact roads. There's obviously a little bit less suspension travel and it's a much stiffer setup, and that means that it does feel a bit bouncier, a bit shakier when you're riding on these sort of roads. Although, you know, the inverse is also true when you're on tarmac, in that this on a normal road when there's not covered in snow and ice is actually a very slick car to drive. It does ride very, very nicely. It's quite a sporty feel to it, whereas the X-Trail then would feel much more like a traditional SUV. It would feel a little bit kind of bit more body roll and stuff like that on the roads, whereas the X-Trail is better suited to these rougher off-road, more off-road type surfaces. So that's just a bit of a difference immediately between the two. Obviously there's a load of torque with this electric Ariya as well. The E-Force setup means you've got 300 Newton meters on the front axle and 300 Newton meters on the rear axle. So there is plenty of performance, and with these studded tires, it really does accelerate quite quickly. You've got no sensation at all of any kind of wheel spin either. It just totally absorbs everything, just puts that power right down and just goes for it. There is a little bit less weight over the front axle of the Ariya as well, and that does translate across to just how the steering feels, just how much kind of bite it has on the front. The X-Trail does feel that little bit more precise on these more challenging roads, and that's really the one difference that you notice, apart from the ride quality that I already mentioned. But in electric, the beauty of it is when you do get on quite low grip surfaces like this, when I slow this right down, even when you're pulling away, because you've got that electric power, you've got so much torque instantly that it's very easy to modulate, very easy to control, so that when you do start to pull away, you know, if a wheel is kind of struggling for grip on any of the corners, it's able to overcome that so quickly, and you can really play with that torque at low speeds. You're not having to deal with revving up the engine and getting up to a certain speed and managing the transmission in that way. So it is a lot easier to use. And I guess that's one thing that for a lot of people you might not really realize or appreciate that until you're in the situation like this, where you've got, you know, really bad, you know, mud or sand or snow in this case, and having that ability to just be able to then, you know, leverage all that torque instantly, have it on hand there. Again, it can shift between the motors on each axle so quickly as well. So that's another really big benefit of having something like this E-Force system and how it works and how it delivers that power. So that's one other thing that I think people will sort of, when you appreciate it, you drive it, that's another big thing. Again, like with the X-Trail, this also has the e-pedal function. So this in this version, in the Aria, is a true proper one pedal feel. It's electric, so as you're driving along, you know, it's very, very smooth, and then as soon as you let off, it just starts to slow the car down. And the way the e-pedal does it, you know, how it works, like, it slows the car down. It's not like you're pressing the brakes and, as I mentioned, you're getting that kind of pitch. You don't get that. It's kind of, I guess one way I would describe it is, as you're driving along, you know, obviously you're doing sort of 50, 60 kilometers an hour here, and as you let off, it's kind of like this invisible hand almost like pulling the car back a little bit, and how it slows down. It's very smooth. It doesn't feel like you're jamming on the brakes or anything like that. And over time, and it doesn't take a very long time, I would say as well, over time you get used to that, and you almost just never use the brake pedal in a lot of instances. It just becomes very easy to kind of calculate, and you become used to it, acclimatized to the system. You know how it works, how the level of retardation of speed that it has. And then, yeah, as you're coasting up to traffic lights and things like that, you know, it's very easy to predict and to manage, and it just adds that kind of extra layer of smoothness, of kind of, you know, how it's one of the things that you really get with an electric car that is kind of almost hard to fully explain to people until they go and experience it for themselves. But it's just that little bit slicker in how the whole thing operates. And that's one, again, for me, that's just one thing I love about EVs, is that, you know, for the day-to-day commuting stuff, having that kind of setup makes such a nice difference. And at the same time, that e-pedal function is obviously taking energy and returning it back into the battery rather than wasting the energy. Well, we've been putting the two e-Force cars through their paces, and both have very good merit. They're very, very capable in these pretty tricky conditions. Now, yes, it does help that we've got some studded tires on it, but when you see, we go through the type of driving we've been doing, just how well they perform. The X-Trail was so comfortable on some of those bad roads that we were on. It just soaked up everything very, very easily. Really comfortable, super smooth to drive as well. The powertrain is so nice in how it delivers the power. It works really, really well, and you've still got that kind of benefit of it being a hybrid. And then obviously with the Aria is really nice to drive on the road, but on these roads it did sort of struggle a little bit. Just how that suspension setup is done on this car, it does kind of take away a little bit from what it's like on these harder conditions, but on normal roads it's supreme to drive. That said, on some of the other conditions we're in with this, how you've got all that torque, you know, 300 Newton meters on each axle, really smooth delivery. You can really play with all that electric delivery of power. It does a really good job in that respect as well. And it's just, again, super smooth. So this is a really nice EV to drive as well. Definitely, if you're just sticking to normal road use, well worth it. But it's the X-Trail that really shone in this sort of instance, in this scenario. It did a great job. But if you want to know more about either of these cars, head over to our website. It's completecar.ie. You'll find it linked in the description below. It's a great resource for researching your next car purchase and keeping up with all of the latest news. You'll find detailed reviews of those there, and indeed all of their rivals. If you've enjoyed this, tell us what you think in the comments below. We always love hearing from our viewers, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Thanks for watching.